This is again Monty Brown, Sigmatek. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let you all know that inside the Zoom toolbar, you should be able to find a Q&A section. So as you're watching this, please feel free to write in your questions. And at the end of the presentation, I will go back and answer those questions for you. During the webinar, the participants will be muted, but I will share my contact information with you so that we can be in touch to make sure all your questions are answered. We'll start here in a couple seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and jump on in then. So thank you guys for showing up today. I hope the weather is decent wherever you happen to be located. My name is Monty Brown. I am the Business Development Manager for MRP. I am based out of North America, but as you will see from this map, we do have coverage across the entire globe. So wherever you happen to be located or wherever you need to have our assistance, we do have representatives available. You can also see there from this screen our website, which is www.sigmamrp.com. Lots of good information there. I'm only going to be talking about quoting today, and that's just really the tip of the iceberg. So please make sure you go to sigmamrp.com to see more there. You'll also see my email address and my phone number. This could be a fairly short webinar. We'll see how it goes, but I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. Again, I want to remind you, please put your questions in the Q&A section, and I'll get to them at the end. All right, we'll start off just talking about how typical part quoting happens. Now, this is not how everybody does it, but this is what I see a lot out there. I'm going to have a drawing. It's going to come to you in the form of a DWG, a DXF, even a model file. You're going to bring that into the system, whether it's your CAD system or maybe your CAM system. You can get some basic details out of there. Most people are then going to retype that into Excel or some sort of a calculator that they're using. From there, they're going to retype that data into a Word document because they want to have something nice to send out to their customers, a nice letterhead, nice graphics, etc. So we've got manual typing in both of those places. Then they're going to convert that Word document to a PDF, and they're going to attach that PDF to an email and send that out. Very nice. It's a very good solution. Again, I see this happening across the globe, really, with how people are quoting. This is all very well and nice until you start talking about multiple parts. That's where this starts to get a little off the rails. So for instance, I've got an assembly shown here. Once you bring an assembly into the mix, all of that manual typing snowballs. So now instead of just one part, having to get that into Excel and into Word and so forth, now you have to get all of these parts and all of this stuff transferred. Now, lots of people and lots of different systems do have ways to import data and export data, but that's still a manual task, making sure that everything came in right, making sure that what was imported was what you meant to import. It's very cumbersome. And some of you will have ERPs. And those ERPs are going to make sending that final quote out. But usually an ERP system, still today in 2017, will be a snowball effect on this data that has to get typed in, especially if you want to be able to turn that quote into an order in a very close fashion. So along with all this typing, what I regularly see out there in industry is lots of screaming and hair pulling. Lots of people backlogged, lots of problems just getting these even mid-size assemblies out. So what I'm going to show you all today is I'm going to show you how Sigmanest and SigmaMRP can get rid of nearly all of that typing, certainly the retyping. So instead of a lot of typing and so forth, we're going to go from that SolidWorks assembly that you see there on the left through Sigmanest and SigmaMRP and into an email quote. And I'm also going to show you several different ways to quote items. Agenda for this afternoon was a relatively short one. I've already discussed the struggles that modern quoting is going through right now. The next thing I want to show you is I'm going to show you quoting just some plain DXFs. And then I'm going to show you nested quotes, and I'll explain what nested quotes means as I'm doing it. Then I'm going to show you some SolidWorks import with that SolidWorks assembly I had on that screen. And at the very end, I'm going to show you what it means to do a parametric quick quote. Again, I want to thank you all for coming, and as you do have questions, please list those, and I will get them answered towards the end. So let's just go ahead and jump into Sigmanest right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend like I'm going out to my file directory. My customer has just emailed me 2 new drawings. And I'm going to bring these 2 drawings into Sigmanest. Something very typical. Lots of people will do. These are going to come in. We're going to see if we have good geometry. And this is not so much of a Sigmanest demo, by the way, but if you do see things in here you want to learn more about, I can absolutely answer those questions too. So we've got our 2 parts in here. I'm going to go ahead and bring them into Sigmanest. And as they come into Sigmanest, you're going to notice several things right off the bat. First off, Sigmanest already knows how long it's going to take to cut this part. It knows it's going to take 3 minutes and 1 second. It's based on the plasma. And for those of you that don't know Sigmanest, please know that Sigmanest will also drive your machines. So the same machine parameters that are being used to drive your machines on the floor, whether it's a Trump, a Mazak, a Mata, you name it, no matter what, those are the same technical information and specifications that's being used to make these parts and quote this information. So you'll notice I've typed nothing in here yet. All I'm going to do right now is update my quantities. I'm going to say that I want 18 of this and that it is cut only. I have some options here, whether it's going to be bent or formed or welded, etc. I'm going to make this one 2 bends because we saw that it has 2 bends on it. We've got another one. We're going to put some bending on it. We're also going to do 18 of this. Both of them are 1/4 inch mild steel. I'm going to say OK. And it's going to create those parts and save those parts into my Sigmanest parts library. At this point, I simply save this as a quote number, which puts these parts together. Now, I only did 2 parts here, but I could have done 15 or 20. And in fact, the next one I do, I'll explain, show you how we do more parts all at once. But you'll see now that Sigmanest now knows all the costs. So we know the true cost of this part right here is $32.10. The rectangular cost is $32.80, which makes sense that the rectangular would be a little bit more. Here, this one, there's going to be more of a difference between those two because there's more open space on this part. And I'll show you nested cost here next. So I'm going to save this. This is going to be saved as Q107. So whether this was 1 part or 57 parts, we know it is Q107. So I'm going to clear that workspace. Now I'm going to go into Sigma MRP. Sigma MRP is where I'm going to really start my quote. I'm going to build a quote here, and we're going to use Ringo. Ringo is going to be our test subject today. So we'll get this new quote going for Ringo. Now, under a typical ERP system, after bringing the parts into CAD/CAM, you would then have to build what we call an item master in the ERP world. With Sigma MRP, that's already done once you have that Sigmanest part. So instead of going in there and typing in the part numbers, the length, the width, the weights, how much material they're going to use, all we have to do is come out here to the Sigmanest button, and we find that Q107 that we just made. Click Add Close, and it's going to pull all of those details in from the Sigmanest parts library. Give it a minute there to do that. And when it brings it into Sigma MRP, you're going to see that it comes in with the image. It also comes in with all the raw costs. So these costs are coming directly from, you see the material costs and labor costs, These are coming directly from Sigmatek, which, as I said earlier, are coming directly from your machine posts. Now inside Sigma MRP, we can start assigning either a markup or a margin. You always have your choice. And you can assign individual labor cost, individual labor margin, individual material margin, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is just put an overall. I'm going to say 25% across the board. I reprice that. And it's going to update all my costing, all my totals. Now we can see down here in our overview, we've got 25% margin. We've got $764 in labor, $799 material costs. Add all that up, and there's our total price. So we've effectively gone from DXFs to Sigma MRP in about a minute or so. I spent more time talking about it than doing it. The only thing left we have to do is get that quote to our customer. I'm going to do that by simply clicking this drop down and switching the status from draft quotation to quote. Sigma MRP is then going to lead me through creating this quote, and it's going to open up a PDF. This PDF is a fully customizable report. Get your own logo, get your own details on it, however you want to align this. But you can see we've got the individual unit prices, the total prices. You can show your tax, however you want to get this in there. And from here, getting that to email is just as simple as clicking the email report button. And it's going to pull up an Outlook email, and we're ready to go. You're ready to type your message and get out there. So you can see how this was so much quicker than having to constantly retype those details and push them through. The whole system is linked together using the same databases, and that's what makes this so powerful. So let me close this example. Now I'm going to show you what it means to do a nested quote. Going back here to Sigmatek, I'm just going to open up one of our example workspaces that has some parts in there. A lot of people get in a situation where they have a set of parts that must be nested together. And since they're nested together, especially when there's ugly parts like this one here, which has lots of space in between it, you want to make sure you're getting paid for the space. You want to make sure that you have a good a nest, and then you want to be able to sell that nest. Well, with Sigma MRP and Sigmatek, we make that very, very simple. You can see here we've got parts nested inside, but we've also got to account for all this extra space that's out around these parts. We can do that the same way we did that last quote. We just create another quote. This one here now, instead of just showing the true and rectangular cost, we show the nested cost. So you can see a very good example, this ugly part right here with all that white space inside of it. If we were to just go on the true cost, that would be $8.67, because the assumption is being made that that space is going to be utilized. But when you move to a rectangular cost, it moves up to $28.56, and nested, it goes to $29.62. So you can see, we give you the options for how you want to cost your parts, based on the circumstances, based on the margins, how competitive you have to be. You want to make these decisions on the fly. And you can put out a 50-part nest, have some of them nested, and have others be rectangular. It's always your choice. But once you have these parts in there, again, we save that. I'm going to clear my workspace here in Sigmatek. And then I'm just going to go back to Sigma MRP. I'm going to do another new job. We'll just keep picking on Ringo here for this webinar session. Just like I did last time, I'm going to import these parts from that quote 108. This time it's coming in as oxygas because I didn't switch my machine to a plasma, but it knows what machine it was quoted for. And just like the previous time, it's going to go out to that Sigma Nest library, and it's going to pull all those details in for us, saving us, on this deal, it would have easily been 20 to 30 minutes worth of typing. So that's coming in here. We see all of our parts. Like the last time, I'm just going to do a 25% margin. Get all that repriced and saved. It's going to update my margin down here shortly. And we're going to see that we've got $130 of profit that's going to be coming from this job. So again, you can see it very, very clearly, very quickly. And again, just so we can see this, I'm going to go ahead and switch this to a quote. I'm going to print that quotation out. Get that PDF again. Very, very quick. So you can see now what a quote would look like with lots more parts on it. We've got a multi-page quote here. And again, everything is fully customizable. I see that someone's asked a question. I appreciate that. I will get to that question here towards the end. Thank you. All right, so very quickly now, we've quoted a bunch of different parts. I've shown you true cost, nested cost, and rectangular cost. Next thing I want to do is I want to show you a SolidWorks assembly. This is a little bit more involved, but I think you'll appreciate the time savings that you'll get from this system. So here we are in SolidWorks. You see we've got a fairly typical assembly. We've got lots of different pieces, some welding that's going to happen here. We've got some bolts that are going on multiple sides of this assembly. If we were to quote this under traditional methods, we would have to deal with each one of these parts individually. So I'm going to show you how we're just going to pull that whole thing into Sigmanest. So going back here to Sigmanest, instead of a DXF, now I'm going to go import that SolidWorks file. And while this is importing, I should tell you that the SolidWorks file that I'm importing is one that we created here internally. You can see the status. It is actually running SolidWorks in the background. So this is a native API connection to SolidWorks. And we're actually reading in the properties from SolidWorks, not just the geometry. So you're going to see some of these special details that are going to be automatically filled out here in this case. So very similar screen to what you've seen before. First part that came up here was this formed bottom bracket, and it automatically knows that the material is mild steel and 1/4 inch, and it knows that it's getting bent. So that data came in automatically from SolidWorks. Whereas this part, the next part down the line here, it knows that while it's 1/4 inch and mild steel also, that it's only a cut part. There's no forming to that part. And it has all of these parts in there. It has all the times and so forth. So all of that came without any typing, coming directly from SolidWorks. So we're going to go ahead and import those parts, get those saved in our database. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a Sigmanest BOM. I'm just going to call this Demo Friday. And for those of you Sigmanest users out there, let me show you what a Sigmanest BOM does. So here we've got this Demo Friday. And it's basically just, it's similar to the quote I did earlier, but this keeps track of all the quantities. So if we would have had 2 of these, 4 of these, 5 of these, all of that information would have came in directly from SolidWorks. So it's in there now. It's called Demo Friday, and we can just link files to it. And now as you update this assembly in Sigmanest, everything downstream will just automatically be updated. So that Demo Friday is now out there. Close my workspace. Now let's go back in and let's build Ringo a new job. Well, let's build the assembly first. I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to create a new assembly. Call it Demo Friday. It's a SolidWorks assembly. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in a routing. So I'm going to put in some weld time. I'm going to say it's going to take 45 minutes to weld that thing together. Now what I've got to do is I've got to bring in all my parts. So I've got 45 minutes of weld time, And into that weld time, I am simply going to import that Sigmatek bill of material. And instead of doing the quote, this time I'm going to use a Sigmatek bomb. And there's my demo Friday. I'll link that in there. Do the batch size. I just want one of these per assembly. Ringo decides to order 5 of these. We'll show you how that's done here in a minute. So just like I showed you before, it's going out to Sigmatek and it's linking this assembly to all of those Sigmatek parts. It makes it very, very easy to keep your revisions. If you add a hole to one of those parts, you don't have to go through and redo this whole assembly. It's about ready to come open here. There we go. So now we've got all of our parts in there. And these parts, as they come in, it automatically knows what the time was. And this was a plasma job. And we've got to get those 8 bolts in there too. So I'm going to go ahead and add a product. I know that I've got some 3/8, 16, 3/4 inch long bolts in my system. So I'm going to add 8 of those, if you remember from that assembly. And it's pulling that information in right now. There we go. So now we've got all of our parts from that assembly. We've got our bolts. We've got all of our costs. Everything is being kept track of by Sigma MRP. One other thing that we can do here is we can put an image on this. So prior to this demo, I took a JPEG of that assembly. It's a little screenshot. So I've saved that on there so that it's going to be there for all time. And if we come back to it, we should always be able to see that that image is there for it. So now when we're ready to actually send the quote on this, let's get Ringo back here in the system with another new quote. This time I am going to add an assembly. It's going to go out to my database and find all of the assemblies that I've built. Give me that list. There's that demo Friday right there. Add and close. We want to quote 5 of those. And there we go. We got 5 of these parts in here. We got some margin. We can change that the same way we did the last one. We've got $232 worth of profit. If we want to look at that quote, it's very simple just to look at that quotation. I'm going to use a different quote form here so that we can make that assembly a little bit bigger. And now we're ready to email this quote. They can see that their unit cost is $135 and their total cost is $677. Very, very quick for doing these types of assemblies. And we could have added other components in there too. I only added a few bolts, but we could have added structural parts. We could have added other sub-assemblies. Really, the sky's the limit, but that gives you a good overview of what we can do there. Last but not least, I want to show you what's going to happen when Ringo calls me up and he says, "Hey, Monty, I need 8 parts." I say, "Okay, well, send me a drawing." He says, "Well, I don't have a drawing. Engineering forgot to put them in the model. They're not ordered. We're trying to assemble this thing this afternoon. I need them shipped today. Actually, I want to come pick them up." I'm like, "Ringo, you know how big the parts are?" And he's like, "Man, they're just squares." And I'm like, "All right." So what we can do is we can build Ringo a new job on the fly while he's on the phone. We say, "Ringo, tell me about your part." He says, "Well, they're just a square." Okay, so we're going to build this on the fly. Does your square have any holes in it? He goes, "Nope, nope." He says, "Is it radius?" He goes, "Yeah, let's get some radiuses on there." Okay. "How big's your square?" He says, "It's 10 by 10. Very good. What size you want the radius? He goes, oh, I don't know, 2 inches. I said, great. So now we've got our 10-inch square, 2-inch radiuses. Sigmatek is going to pull that part up. He says there's 1/4-inch mild steel. Very good. He wanted 10 of them. So we save those parts into the Sigmatek library. So there's our part for Ringo, drawn on the fly while Ringo was on the phone. It's in Sigmatek. But the cool thing is, it's also going to be appearing here in Sigma MRP in just a second. There it is. So we've got it here in Sigma MRP. Again, he said he wanted 10 of them. And we can see there that they're $5.90 a piece. But he wants them today. So we're going to charge him 20 bucks a piece. We're not going to let the margins and everything dictate this. He's getting a rush job. We're doing him a favor. So we put that into the mix. So we had 10 pieces, 20 bucks a piece. You can see it's doing the math. It's thrown in some tax, but we've got $200. We got $16 worth of tax. We can perform that, shoot that quote out to him, give him a verbal right over the phone. You can turn around, commit this to an order, and you can have this order to your Sigmatek nesters within seconds of getting off the phone. That gives you time enough to walk back out to the laser department, probably get a chewing from your production supervisor out there for making him work so hard, but you're going to be able to deliver those parts this afternoon. And that is just the tip of the iceberg for what we can do with Sigma MRP and Sigmatek. So what I've shown you today here is how we can bring DXFs into the system, how we can read attributes and so forth from those, how we can do nested quotes, how we can bring SolidWorks assemblies in their entirety, reading their not permissions, but reading the properties and so forth that go into them. And then I've shown you how we can do some very quick quotes. All of this with Sigma MRP and Sigmatek. So I want to thank you all. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A, see what we've got in here. Well, somebody put a question in there, and then they must have got it answered. Yes, marketing answered that for us. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions that you want to ask? Well, then that will conclude our webinar for today. I want to thank you guys for showing up. And again, you see my contact information. Please visit our website, shoot me an email or give me a call, and I will dive into a lot more details for you. Have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.